Governments of businesses around the world are waiting for details of new US trade tariffs expected to be announced in just a few hours. Stock markets are jittery over worries of a major global economic slowdown. Donald Trump says all countries could be hit to offset what he sees as a trading disadvantage for US companies. And as countries around the world prepare to retaliate with their own tariffs, the leader of America's biggest trading partner, Mexico, says her country won't.
Rows of trucks line up at dawn to carry goods across the Mexican border into the United States. With just hours to go until Trump's announcement on a new round of tariffs, drivers here are nervous.
If Donald Trump imposes tariffs, there will be less production. They won't buy anything in Mexico.
The scale and breadth of the duties that the United States could impose on Mexico, one of its top trading partners, is still unknown. But the country's president is against any rash retaliation.
We do not believe in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, because that always leads to a bad situation. Of course, measures are taken because measures are taken on the other side, but the dialogue must continue.
Other trading partners of the United States are also bracing for impact. Brazil's Senate voted to approve a reciprocity bill, which would allow the government to respond to tariffs imposed by the US or any other country with its own duties and trade barriers. The Japanese government says it made last-ditch attempts to convince the United States to exclude its auto industry from harsh tariffs. Japan exports 1/5 of its cars to the US each year. In Europe, the mood is mixed. A French government spokesperson warned of what she called major economic disruption to Europe and the United States by the expected powerful tariffs. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer warned against any knee-jerk reactions.
We've been preparing for all eventualities ahead of the confirmation of US tariffs later today. Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interests.
Avoiding the trade war or preparing for battle, the world is waiting for what Donald Trump will announce.
Well, let's take a look at this with our correspondents, Janelle Dumalaon in Washington and Jack Parrock in Brussels. Welcome both. Let's start with you, Janelle. 2 hours until the big announcement. What do we know?
Yeah, so today is the big day, and the White House has really sought to create a lot of suspense around this. We know that Trump is a master at fueling drama, and he definitely is succeeding. So it's been relatively spoiler-free. There has been relatively little coming out of the White House in terms of what policy option Trump has finally decided on, whether it is those reciprocal tariffs where the U.S. just matches the existing tariffs that other countries have levied on U.S. imports, or rather whether there will be a more targeted approach where the U.S. takes the countries that it deems the biggest offenders of what it calls taking advantage of the U.S. in terms of trade and dividing them according to tiers and tariffing them according to those tiers, or whether we are still looking at that one big number that Trump may want to levy on all imports from all countries. We've also heard conflicting information from the Treasury, for example, as to whether these tariffs are actually ceilings that can be negotiated downwards, or whether they are in fact revenue-generating instruments meant to hit a target of $6 trillion. It cannot be both. So there's been so much back and forth with regard to the tariffs. So just as a quick review on what is on the table already, there are the steel and aluminum tariffs, there are the 20% tariffs on Chinese imports, the stay on the across-the-board tariffs for Canadian and Mexican imports are expiring today. The foreign car imports, those kick in tomorrow. And there's whatever else he's going to announce today. I might have missed something, so apologies for that. I would not be surprised. It has been a lot to keep track of. But we will know more later, but how much of it will stick, we also don't know that.
OK, Jack Parrock in Brussels. The European Union says it has a strong plan to counter these new tariffs. What's that likely to entail?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. The Europeans are coming out and saying that they've got this strong plan. That's what we heard from Ursula von der Leyen. But as we were just hearing from Janelle, there is so much that we don't know about what's going to come out of the White House and what Trump is going to announce in that Rose Garden. And if people in Washington don't know, then people in Brussels sure as hell don't know. And they're trying to work out what they will do. It's likely that the European side would try to find a way to keep this within the tariffs sort of battle. So they will reimpose tariffs to a similar value returning on American products. But from a European perspective, there's a limit to that because they run a trade deficit with the United States. So essentially, the EU has 157 billion euros less that it imports into the EU than it sends to the United States. So trade goes more the other way. So there is a certain limit on that. So then the other options for the Europeans are potentially targeting big US tech firms and how they operate in the European Union. But that would be seen by the Americans as a big escalation in what we're now pretty much terming the trade war.
And Janelle, we have countries like Mexico and the United Kingdom saying, let's not do tit for tat, let's talk. But lots of other people saying, no, let's do the tit for tat thing. Are retaliatory tariffs the right way to deal with Trump?
It's difficult to say what the right approach is going to be because, once again, we don't know exactly what they have to respond to. So it's really hard to say at that moment. But of course, each country is going to have to weigh the responses according to how much it would affect their respective economies. There is not going to be a one-size-fits-all fit here. And you were talking about Mexico and how the president wanted to have a more comprehensive approach, wanted a more wait-and-see approach. That, of course, comes in contrast to the more combative stances adopted by the EU or by Canada's Mark Carney, who has said that the relationship that the US and Canada have once enjoyed is effectively over. But, you know, this is really going to be hard for them either way because it's hard to know what is going to satisfy the US. If countries, for example, started to relocate their manufacturing to the US, would Trump be satisfied with that? Because then they would not be able to generate revenue from imports. So that objective falls away. There's also the other challenge that trade negotiations are notoriously difficult. And will countries be able to rely on the US as a consistent negotiation partner? So all of these questions are open at the moment.
OK, thank you for that, Janelle. DW's Janelle Dumalaon in Washington and Jack Parrock in Brussels. Thank you both. Well, Donald Trump has warned that there might be some pain for US consumers as a result of his tariffs. We asked Americans how they feel.
I just think when people voted that they thought tariffs were going to make their lives easier without realizing that if you add a tariff to goods coming in, that our costs would then go up because the person who is selling it to us will just add it onto our prices. So I think those people, I'm not going to name which political party they are, because my husband is one of them, will have a rude awakening when they go to try and buy specific items.
So the expectation, of course, is any impact is short term because either they resolve the issue or things relax a little bit. But there could be some short term disruption and some issues with pricing and what people have to pay. But the concern is, my company isn't able to sell their product in Europe and some of these other countries due to the tariffs and taxes. So what we're hoping happens is the environment gets a little level and we're just as easily able to sell our products in their country as they are in ours. But
it doesn't matter. It's just a lose-lose proposition.
Why?
Because no one wins. No one wins. If we're going to charge import duties to each other, think about the bureaucracy. Think about the fact that the prices go up for the consumer, so there's no winner.
I mean, in principle, it's true a lot of other countries have been tariffing the United States, and it makes sense that we'd want to have some sort of reciprocal arrangement. We don't want to let other countries take advantage of us, But there is a concern, especially if there's uncertainty about what the tariffs are going to be. Businesses to invest, they need to make these decisions many years in advance.